Welcome to Clocking In, Voices of NC Manufacturing. I'm your host, Phil Mintz, Director of the North Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, otherwise known as NCMEP. My role is to drive outreach to NC manufacturers, build relationships to federal and state leaders, and coordinate efforts to drive profitable manufacturing growth in North Carolina. Throughout my time working closely with manufacturers, I have heard the most quirky, curious, and memorable stories. I wanted to turn these stories into a podcast so that others may hear and be informed and inspired. From humble beginnings to manufacturing titans, from tragedy to triumph, I will be interviewing some of these manufacturers who have made North Carolina manufacturing the powerhouse that it is today.
First Flight Venture Center is an NCMEP partner that focuses on the entrepreneurial and startup space. It provides a dynamic ecosystem for developing businesses, offering office and lab locations and access to resources and expertise. As a part of First Flight Venture Center, Hangar 6 supports early stage, high science, high impact startups in rapidly developing hardware and solving important engineering challenges on the company's path to commercialization. Hangar 6 is a state-of-the-art facility designed to support the growth of all small and large early-stage technology companies. Today, I'm talking to First Flight's Director of Programs, Emma Runge, and the Director of Hangar 6, Ben Provan, and we're going to learn more about them and this special program. How you doing today, guys?
Wonderfully. How about you, Phil?
This has been a day, but we're good.
And I'm doing well.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about you two and how you got involved in First Flight Ventures and Hangar 6. We'll start with you, Ben, because I think you're newer. And so how did you come about being a part of Hangar 6 as a part of First Flight Venture?
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm one of the newest additions to the team, having been here for 6 months. So most recently, I lived in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, for the last 14 years and was an entrepreneur myself. I co-founded and ran a co-living startup called Open Door, focused on housing. I'm actually from the Triangle originally, born and raised in Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels. And I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from Cornell, where I studied robotics. And for the first half of my career, I was in the design and engineering world. So I did product design for Bose Corporation for a while in their new ventures division, which focused on early stage pre-market concepts and prototypes. So Bose is known for their audio products, but I actually worked on a number of projects outside of audio products, kind of more on the R&D side of things, including an active car suspension system, as well as a noise canceling baby monitor played music to babies and then canceled it out. But then got into the startup world after that. I joined a waste to biofuels startup that was trying to convert various waste streams into usable products. So all that is to say, when I first connected with First Flight Venture Center and they were looking for a director for Hangar 6, it seemed like a really great match because I have a background both in mechanical engineering and fabrication, which is obviously very relevant, but then also the startup world, being a former founder myself and having worked for an early stage startup. So a good mix of kind of what it takes to support the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem here that are starting hardware companies and needing parts made or design services made and the various things that we do.
Well, great. We're welcome you aboard there. We're glad to see you're in there. Emma, can you tell us kind of how the concept of Hangar 6, grew out of First Flight Ventures and a little bit about how you got involved in all of that?
Sure. Thanks, Phil. So Hangar 6 was being conceptualized back in 2017. There was the need in the ecosystem for folks who were advancing their ventures. Sometimes you need a prototype. And so this, the need to go ahead and have a cost-effective prototyping center so that if you're coming in with a napkin drawing, how can you go ahead and possibly execute on that? That really served as the foundation for the start of Hangar 6, conceptualized in 2017 with an EDA grant. And then Hangar 6 opened its doors, I believe, in February of 2018. And so now for just over 6 years, how can those prototyping services be used to go ahead and help those entrepreneurs go ahead and take their ideas to the next level? In terms of my personal journey in regards to innovation and entrepreneurship, I've actually been involved with on the innovation and entrepreneurship side since I was in college. I was the student lobbyist for Georgia Tech back in the early 90s, where I'd go down to the General Assembly, highlight why you'd want to fund a research university and point to a state-funded incubator as part of that narrative. So that's a lens into me over 30 years ago. After working for IBM for a couple of years as an SAP consultant, I did political campaigns for over 11 years, the last of which being communications director on the Georgia governor's race in 2010. One of the things that was underneath my belt at the time was policy. At the time, we were the last state in the country to allow our pension system to invest in private equity and venture capital. Grabbed some buddies of mine in the VC space, threw together a straw man on that to go ahead and help carry that idea further forward. And then when I was working in local government in Atlanta, while I was focused on the policy side, also trying to do cluster-based approaches to innovation and entrepreneurship at the regional and the state level. And then when we moved to the Triangle for my wife's gig at NC State in 2017, I had the good fortune of being introduced to folks at First Flight, started volunteering here in January of 2018, and then came on board in a full-time capacity in June of 2018. So it's an honor to be able to serve those innovators and entrepreneurs in a number of different capacities.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important space because, there's a long road between, having an idea for a business and something that you want to develop and getting it all the way to something that can be sold and be productive in society. And you guys help entrepreneurs navigate those things. And so Ben, talk a bit about the role of Hangar 6 and what you're trying to accomplish there and some of the capabilities.
Sure thing. So, on the whole, First Flight Venture Center supports high impact, high science startups. So high science is a wide umbrella, but it includes everything from biotech to ag tech to robotics to clean tech, climate tech. So there's a subset under that umbrella that has hardware needs where they need to make a physical product, either the actual product they're developing, or in some cases, they have a proprietary process, especially if it's biotechnology or medical devices that they need hardware made to actually run that process. So Hangar 6, as part of the overall kind of mission-driven way that First Flight serves our engineers, we have this capability that when they need to get hardware made, we can work with them on that front. And there's a couple ways we work with startups. The most basic way is if they have something they need made or manufactured, they can send it to us and we'll get it made for them. We have a myriad of digital manufacturing pieces of hardware, everything from 3D printers to laser cutters. We have CNC routers. We also have mills, lathes, machine shop tools, whatnot. So there's a lot of ways we can get stuff made. But we also have a lot of entrepreneurs who don't yet have a full engineering team, or even a single engineer on their team, especially if they're more science focused. So we also do a lot on the design side, as Emil mentioned earlier, kind of going from the back of the napkin sketch into actual hardware. So a lot of times when we're working with startups, we'll take that literal napkin sketch or a whiteboard sketch or some concept and then actually make that into an engineering design, usually through three-dimensional design, CAD modeling. Sometimes we're doing electronic design, custom PCB boards, and then also controls, things like Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and prototyping scale controls electronics. In that case, we're able to really go from napkin to an actual hardware and then get it made. And then we also, I'd say the last way we serve entrepreneurs is for particularly tenants in the building. They have optional access to use our equipment. So a number of startups we work with, they actually have the skill to run the equipment themselves. And so they'll come in and, do a small batch production run or get certain parts made so they can go ahead and get that hardware developed and start testing it.
So there are business model involved, and how do you get access to it? I mean, you talked about people who have space in First Flight Ventures having some access, but can others have access too?
Yeah, we've evolved the models over the years. Some of it just due to the space we have. As I mentioned before, one of the ways, not all of the entrepreneurs we serve actually are physically in the building. We're here as a statewide incubator at First Flight, so we'll serve anyone who is from the state and is sort of aligned with our mission of high impact, high science. So in that respect, there's a lot of folks we work with who don't, we don't even physically see them at the facility. We're doing Zoom calls with them. They're sending designs over, and then we're working remotely on their behalf, sort of as a fee for service. Then in terms of ones who have access to space, we used to have a membership model where people could come in and rent the space. But the short version of that is the pandemic really killed that model. It was a really challenging time to have people in person, and it was just hard to make that work financially. So we moved to one where well, first we moved most of the equipment into the same facility that the rest of our startups are in, our incubator facility, which has over 60 offices and lab spaces. And then it was just sort of a natural fit to let the entrepreneurs in the space get access to the equipment. They do pay an additional fee on top of what they're renting. Co-working members as well can also pay that fee to use the space. And those are people who they don't have a private office or private lab, but they're using our common areas. And so there are a number of ways to plug in. But as a result, I think the proximity to the rest of the lab space and office space in this building is really convenient, especially for the startups that are either have to do pretty rapid iteration. So they want to get in there and quickly get stuff made, or in some cases, for example, there's a company here called Seneca Devices, which makes healthcare devices they actually actively selling into medical facilities. They are doing small batch production, and some of the components are being made on our equipment, and then they're assembling in the office and lab space they rent here. At least as long as they're at the scale they're at now, it's really a self-contained system for them. And at some point, if they're successful, they'll probably need to go to a larger facility.
So Emil, obviously your First Flight Ventures, expands a little bit broader than helping people get started and developing their ideas. What's your vision of what you want to do with an entrepreneurs tie into Hangar 6 directly, and how do you kind of explain to them up front that this, you can take it from the beginning until actually hold it in your hand?
There are a number of ways in which we're able to go ahead and really engage those entrepreneurs, one of which is through our Propeller Early Stage Accelerator program. We were fortunate to have done a manufacturing cohort as a result of the support of NCMEP in the last 12 months. So we had 10 companies that went through that early stage accelerator. And one of the things that we did is when we think about the ecosystem that we have here in North Carolina that NC State's Industry Expansion Solutions Group has pulled together as a result of the NCMEP umbrella, we were able to spotlight that ecosystem to the companies that were going through as a result of that cohort. So those 6 weeks, we were doing the normal methodology in terms of the accelerator. But then that 7th week, we were able to go ahead and spotlight phenomenal partners like the Wilson College of Textiles, the Manufacturing Solutions Center, the Polymer Center of Excellence, and so many others from around the state that are doing the great work of manufacturing in North Carolina. We know there's a symbiotic relationship between innovation and manufacturing. And I think that ecosystem in North Carolina is alive and well. And it's one of the reasons that we rank 5th in the country in terms of overall manufacturing capacity as a state. And so creating those ties within the ecosystem puts our innovators and entrepreneurs in a far better position to go ahead and take their ideas further and faster. In addition to that, First Flight's fortunate to have programs like the FAST program, the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program, which while it's not a part per se of NCMEP, for companies that are going after small business innovation research and small business technology transfer research, those SBIRs, STTRs, we have free programs that can create that pipeline where if they happen to have a manufacturing component, that's a complementary resource to go ahead and help those companies move their ideas further faster. So again, how can we go ahead and meet those innovators where they are to improve their probability of success moving forward? And that can be in a physical format, like creating a prototype at Hangar 6. It could be through grant writing, grant opportunities through the FAST program or other programs that we have here at First Flight, or through education and training programs like what we have with our early stage accelerator. So there are a host of different ways, and we just try and go ahead and meet them where they are.
Maybe get into the weeds a little bit, Ben. I mean, I know you talked about you can help people that maybe come in with just a drawing on the back of the napkin and maybe not have anything. But how do you handle IP or intellectual property challenges through this process? Your people are developing something and they may have a good idea that they're worried about going somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's definitely a common concern when entrepreneurs come to us and want to do some amount of the development in partnership with us. The simple version is the IP is theirs. We're working on their behalf. We're happy to sign NDAs or similar if they require that. And ultimately, they are our clients and we are their vendor. And so, certainly there's know-how that could be used between projects as our team continues to do more and more projects, but IP is definitely ultimately theirs.
So what do you see going forward? How's the model shaping up for the future? What will companies need to do that in the future that maybe you can evolve to if you don't have it already?
Yeah, it's a great question. We definitely think a lot about that. I mean, in the most basic sense, we are actually looking at ways to get more space to have, just a larger facility that allows for more freedom of movement to do assembly, have our entrepreneurs be able to store inventory and things like that they might need to do, just have bigger equipment. So that's a really simple one. I think we're sort of bursting at the seams here in this facility, and I'd be really excited to expand, the actual footprint in the coming months. Another one is sort of more of a thematic element where, there's a lot of capital and a lot of excitement and interest pouring into particularly the climate tech space. It's behind AI, the second largest VC funded area for the last 2 years. And by and large, climate tech companies are hardware companies. And we're seeing a lot more activity from startups in that realm, whether that's energy storage, batteries, chargers, electrical infrastructure in general. But you also have ag tech. A huge part of ag tech overlaps with climate tech in terms of automation and robotics in the field, or early sensing for pests and other types of dangers to crops and whatnot. So that's one that we're seeing more startups coming through First Flight that have that type of emphasis. And there's also some potential funding opportunities. So, that's one area we're putting some attention into to see how we can be a catalyst in North Carolina for supporting more innovation in the climate space. And also the last thing I'll say there is there's a lot of great government funding through the Infrastructure Act, and then the other federal funds that have been made available for that's making it easier for early stage startups, which can sometimes have a little bit of difficulty getting private capital to fund their research, to now get some non-dilutive funding. As Emil mentioned earlier, we work a lot with startups to do that. And so that's one that has a direct impact in terms of ultimately hardware companies that have funding and are looking to develop hardware and prototypes.
Well, both of you are speaking a lot about grant funding and finding support for clients and things like that. I suppose that's a kind of a big part of kind of what you do to help these entrepreneurs, identify sources of funds to help get their ideas moving forward. Is that a true statement?
Actually, 22% of the companies in North Carolina for the last several years that have gotten SBIR funding have touched at least one First Flight program. So those are some of the areas where there are going to be a handful of organizations in any given state that are thinking about SBIRs, STTRs when they get up in the morning. We know that because of the companies we work with have a higher barrier to entry than, say, a company doing an app, as an example. We know that we need to possibly de-risk those ideas through grant funding to put them in a better position to go after equity funding from, say, an angel group or a VC. It just makes them more competitive, and it means that those dollars are going to go even further. So we know that because the companies in these spaces are going to lend themselves to these types of opportunities, we need to go ahead and create those opportunities to improve their probabilities of success. In addition to that, one of the things that we've done with Hangar 6 is we realized that there's TABA funding, or technical and business assistance funding, to go ahead and once a company's gotten an SBIR, this helps them actually take the idea, it helps them accelerate that, complementary to the SBIR process. So Hangar 6 is in a position to go ahead and help companies with TABA funding, if they're awarded an SBIR and they put that into that application.
Ben, I got one final question I wanted to ask you. Is like, when I think about entrepreneurs and startups, I generally think, they're going to come up with this great idea and, they're going to turn it into something that's going to be fabulous. And then they're just going to go sell it and make a lot of money, right? So, is there any kind of interest in building factories and making parts that people create these days? Or are people just still like, is everybody like, I want to build it, make it work, and sell it?
It's a good question. I mean, there's definitely, I think, more attention on manufacturing than there has been in a long time. I think can credit SpaceX and Tesla, at least at a sort of national level, for, they've been an incredible inspiration to a lot of more mechanical engineering and just real sort of technical engineering types, that how important, if we're going to scale solutions and impact, that manufacturing is. A company that many years ago worked out of Hangar 6 called Planted Materials. They're a really inspiring example of this. They're based in Durham, and they're building renewable carbon negative plywood panels, but instead of doing it from wood, they're doing it from perennial grasses grown in the state of North Carolina. So it touches a lot of things. They're doing manufacturing. They're also doing, creating opportunities in the agriculture space. But what's really exciting about them is their technology is ultimately a manufacturing technology. Obviously, the product is the plywood panels, but from their perspective, the product is the machines that make the panels. And I think that type of thinking and that way of thinking is sort of emerging as an exciting way where there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of funding now. So I do think there's an interesting, almost renaissance, if you will, in the manufacturing space, which is being, there's a tailwind around all of the federal funding going into onshoring manufacturing and state funding as well. So it's a really exciting time. I do see more entrepreneurs thinking about that, not just let me make the widget and sell it. Especially for some of these deeper technologies, you have to be thinking about the manufacturing component to be successful at scale.
And I'm thinking about the book Producing Prosperity that came out, probably a decade and a half ago, that really helped catalyze that symbiotic relationship between the innovation and the manufacturing. And Phil, I think that manufacturing has been part of North Carolina's DNA for a long period of time. And so it's who we are. And so we make things, and hopefully we make things better. And so I think that when we have, institutions like NC State as a land-grant university with North Carolina A&T, when you've got places like, great flagship universities like UNC, other great universities around the state that are, pushing these ideas forward. I mean, I think from a competitive advantage standpoint, North Carolina is really well poised to lead in a 21st century economy, especially that economy that focuses on manufacturing. And so as we look for ways to go ahead and drive that, realizing that you have initiatives like the Manufactured NC website that's going ahead and helping compile all of that information to put our innovators and entrepreneurs in a better position to actually leverage the tremendous resources in North Carolina to take those ideas forward. I think we're exactly to Ben's point. We have a renaissance opportunity. And when we look at those clusters where we're looking in the years to come, look at that engines funding opportunity for textiles. Look at the biomanufacturing opportunity that's coming out of, as a result of what NC Biotech has done. We've got phenomenal partners around this state, and again, the DNA, the industries, et cetera. We are going to rely on manufacturing to push those forward. Time is now. There's no reason for us not to go ahead and push forward.
Yeah, we certainly want to continue to make things in the state, and that's the reason why we do the things that we do. And we appreciate you guys being a part of that whole manufacturing ecosystem. I've been speaking with Emma Runge and Ben Provan, First Flight Venture and Hangar 6. And again, we enjoy the partnership we have with you, not only for NCMEP, but for NC State as well. And we're hoping to get more of our clients out in the field involved in your program and actually use your lab activities. We got started with some of that before the pandemic, but now it's time for us to ramp that back up. So thanks for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Really a pleasure.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you for joining today's Clocking In, Voices of NC Manufacturing. This podcast is brought to you by NC State's College of Engineering, the North Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and Industry Expansion Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about the solutions NCMEP offers, go to www.ncmep.org. Want to listen to previous Clocking In podcasts? Go to ncmep.org/clockingin.